Welcome to another episode of Coder Conversations. Today we have Head of Game Security at Electronic Arts, Elise Murphy. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Absolutely.
Hey, Elise, happy to have you on tonight.
So yeah, just to get things started, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your current role, and how did you get into that role?
Yeah. So my name is Elise Murphy. I am currently the head of game security at Electronic Arts. I've been at EA for about 6.5 years now. And have worked through quite a few different roles while I've been at EA. I kind of started as technical program manager on the game security side, and then just kind of worked my way up. My scope kept kind of expanding pretty naturally as our business was growing over the last few years. Prior to being at EA, I was at Amazon Web Services. And before that, I worked for the Federal Reserve Bank, and I started my career in a university, actually the university that I went to, Loyola University Chicago, as an IT administrator. So I've done a whole bunch of different things. I've been in security for the vast majority of my career. I think the first couple of years, I was more on the IT side of the house. But back in those days, you couldn't just jump into a security career. You had to have some level of IT knowledge before you transitioned over. So I did that.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interestingly enough, I actually studied cybersecurity, and that's what both of my degrees and specializations are in. But you still had to, you still had to prove yourself that you had some baseline tech knowledge before you went into the specialist field.
Well, it's kind of like they say, cybersecurity is not an entry-level field.
Yep.
Was that your experience?
100%.
Okay.
I think it's changed a lot. It's changed a lot in recent years, depending on in what part of security that you're in. But yeah, definitely, back when I was first getting into the industry, it was not for the beginners.
Right.
So it sounds like you have a strong technical background.
I do, yes.
So was that necessary to get the job you have now, or like do you find like the stuff you learned there applicable to what you're doing now?
That's a good question. Yes and no. I think on the technical side of the house, I mean, there's things that I learned, our TCP/IP networking stack and things like that. General coding best practices that serve you well throughout your entire career. The nitty gritty of how I program in Java specifically, I've probably forgotten all of that. But it did give me the foundational knowledge that I needed to get the roles that I had. And then I've done a bunch of certifications and trainings and whatnot throughout my career too, that have helped me kind of hone in on the particular skills and knowledge sets that I've wanted to kind of further myself in. So it's really more of a continuous journey, I would say. But yeah, it was a good way to get started.
Were there specific certifications that EA wanted you to get once you came on board?
No, I actually have not gotten any new certifications since I've been at EA. But at a previous company that I was at, they had a hard level cap on you couldn't get promoted to senior security engineer unless you had a particular certification. And so despite the fact so despite the fact that I had, all of the skills and had, the track record and whatnot to get the promo, in every other case, because I didn't have that box checked, I didn't get the promo right away. So I had to go out and get that.
Yeah, I guess some places are more strict than others.
Yes.
So for our audience sake, who might not know, what is head of game security?
Yeah. So my team, or what the team that I lead, is responsible for the security of not only our games, but the platforms and the services that our games rely on, all the way from conception. So we have an idea of something we want to make, all the way through to, hey, we're ready to sunset and deprecate this service title, whatever the case may be. What that means in between is that we have a team of folks that engage on architecture and design. We provide requirements before teams start building. We do threat modeling as they're going through the building process, essentially to try to find risks and prevent them from being introduced in the first place. And then we have teams that do pen testing, both from a security perspective and from a cheating perspective. that validate the technical controls that we've put in place, that they'll hold, and that there aren't additional risks or exploits that we've introduced prior to release. And then we also have a coordinated vulnerability disclosure program where we work with folks from the industry who've maybe found vulnerabilities in our games and our services to remediate those while the game is live. We also build our own anti-cheat solution. We ship that in a number of our games, and of course are responsible for caring and feeding that and making sure that it's effective and that it's stable, that we're keeping the cheaters out, we're keeping the good players in. All of that.
Yeah, that's important. Yeah, it's definitely important.
Yep.
So yeah, how exactly, if you just could give us kind of like a base level overview, like how do you prevent players from cheating? Or how does that process go?
Yeah, we have a few different, we really look at it as defense in depth. So very similar to the security side of the house, anti-cheat is the same way. So we have a number of different mechanisms that we employ from, one, making sure that our games are built in a way where we're not making it really easy to cheat. We're not introducing a bunch of exploit vectors that, we have to figure out, find, and fix later in the game. We do the pre-release pen tests that help us kind of discover those things. We have our own in-house technology, anti-cheat technology that we built that has been integrated with a number of our games. It is a kernel mode anti-cheat, and you can find some information about that on our website if you're interested. So we have that, which really kind of has two different modes that we look at, kind of preventative and detective. So as much as possible, we want to prevent cheating behavior from happening in our games before it actually impacts our good players. We obviously can't catch everything. Anti-cheat is a cat and mouse game. And so, we're always going to have some attackers that are, a couple steps ahead of us, and we're catching up to them, and then vice versa. So we really try to prevent as much as we can. We know we're not going to be able to prevent everything. So then we also have a team that does, analysis and issues bans and, all that kind of good stuff. But we really
if someone gets caught cheating, are they banned from the game, or how does that work?
It depends on what you did, essentially. We have escalating series of enforcements that we can apply, depending on how egregious your behavior is. So in some cases, somebody might be reporting. In other cases, they may be banned from the EA ecosystem altogether.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Welcome to the show, Logan. Did you have any questions for our guests?
Not yet. I'm digging through the anti-cheat engines that they put together. I've done a lot of testing for anti-cheat engines for bug bounty programs, including Riot Games. So I'm digging through their white papers right
now.
Oh, that's awesome. So, yeah, just to kind of pivot a little bit, can you tell us about your time at Amazon Web Services and how did you like working there?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I was fortunate enough to get in at AWS. I was part of the AWS security group, back in, I'd say fairly early days. It's only 10 years ago, but it feels, like the industry has evolved so much since then. And certainly the team that I was part of, grew kind of tenfold over the time that I was there. So rapid growth. It was an incredible place to witness the scale and the pace of innovation. There was always something new that we were developing, that we were trying to secure, that we were trying to get compliance certifications for, whatnot. So it was very fast paced. I enjoyed my time there overall. I would say that, the pace of business can affect work-life balance. And I kind of got to a point where like running at full speed, working 16-hour days all the time wasn't for me. And I know that not everyone there is like that, but yeah, I got the EA opportunity and was like, you know what, that seems like a dream gig. I'm going to go try it.
Right. I mean, do you feel like Amazon overworks their workers?
I think it's really, again, it's team dependent. I still have really good friends who's still there, who have been there for decades, and they have absolutely amazing teams. They have incredible work-life balance. I think the scale and the pace that we were at versus our resourcing when I was there just wasn't at the right balance it needed to be at.
Right.
So yeah, you mentioned that you noted that there's been quite a bit of change in the cybersecurity industry. Can you tell us like how it's changed over time? Has it become more complex, and do practitioners need to know more?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah, so I think absolutely the space has gotten, more complex. The types of attacks that we saw early days were a lot, I would say, simpler than some of the attacks that we see today. Um, I would say, the things like AI are kind of changing the landscape of that as well. We have, technologies that are newly emerging that, not a lot of people understand. And so that's really kind of an open area of like, this could go either way. Um, what I've seen is that we've seen attackers really move from kind of network stacks. I'm looking for something that's just blatantly exposed to the internet and it shouldn't be, and that kind of thing, to much more complex chains of attacks that take place at the application level. And so that's really the biggest area of growth that I've seen is, we're seeing attacks that are a lot more complex and really require like chaining of events and things like that than we used to see 10, 20 years ago.
And what's the reason for that? Do you know?
I mean, it's security in general is a cat and mouse game, right? So, like, the more that, the more vulnerabilities, exploits that are discovered, the more security vendors, patches are going to be released. We're going to have better monitoring systems, things like that built up that
Right.
detect and prevent those activities. So then people have to get a little bit deeper. They have to dig a little bit more to find, something that works and provides that same, impact for them, whatever that impact may look like.
So it's just a back and forth game.
Yep, yep. I think and that's going to continue forever. The better our security defenses get, the smarter attackers are going to get, and they're going to get more crafty.
Right. Right.
So y'all know AI can be used to create these exploits, but are y'all also utilizing that to help find these exploits and to help find cheaters and things of that nature?
Yeah, so I'm here on behalf of myself, not on behalf of the company, so I can't go into a ton of detail about exactly what technologies we're using and why.
Sure.
But I mean, in general, I would just say in industry, yes, there is a ton of opportunity for the good guys to use AI to help speed up processes. I mean, there's been AI ML solutions out on the market for quite a long time that really excel at finding anomalies in data that, it would take, years for a human to look through with, our eyes. So we've already seen, the power of what, early days, what AI could provide for us. At the same time, we, are potentially giving information to, script kiddies who, previously had a low impact. But now with AI, they're much better attackers. And so, potentially, that could escalate into a situation where we're seeing bigger impacts. I think it's still early days. We're still kind of waiting to see some of that play out, but the potential is there.
Interesting.
Absolutely. So yeah, just to compare and contrast your experience at AWS and EA, is the job relatively the same from a game company to like a product oriented company, or do you have to have a lot of different skills that are completely different?
Yeah, it's a good question. I moved kind of aspects of security that I was part of with the roles that I changed to. So, I was primarily working on regulatory compliance and those types of things when I was at AWS. And I'm more on the product security, game security side at EA. So application security and compliance are different things in general. I would say, you can be absolutely compliant with current regulations and still absolutely totally insecure. So, there's some core kind of fundamental differences in methodology, mindset, and whatnot from that perspective. Overall, I think, the big things that have been transferable for me have been the ability to communicate the risks that we find, and be able to do that at scale and to get people on board for wanting to add more security into their product, their process, whatever that looks like. A lot of places, a lot of times, security is considered the department of no. It's not a group that a lot of developers want to engage or interact with on a regular basis because security makes their jobs harder. And kind of what I've seen, throughout my journey, and the skills that I've found have been the most helpful for me are the ones that help bring people along. You bring people along on the security journey with you. And that's where I've seen kind of the most cultural change and things like that happen. And I saw that at Amazon, and I saw that here. So.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Yeah, Logan and Brian, did y'all have any questions?
I guess I had one question. When you were just getting out of college, when you're getting out of school, and you were entry level into the game industry or into the tech industry, what are some things that you did to get hired? What are some skills that you would recommend people work on to get hired if they're real green in the industry?
Yeah. So I think the biggest skills, again, that were helpful for me, technical skills are fantastic, but you gotta keep up with them. You gotta grow them and whatnot over time. It's always going to require active investment. The things that I really feel separated me from other candidates, or from, other employees throughout my career growth, has been, the soft skills, the people skills, making sure that you're not wasting people's time. You're clearly articulating a problem. You're bringing solutions with you and not just problems. Generally just trying to be helpful, and proactively going after things that I know are going to need to be done regardless. I think those are really the things that kind of like set people apart. Although, of course, we have folks who are deeply proficient in a very, very technically complex space, that, very few people in the world even, are able to do. And so that's a completely different path. And both are very viable, I would say.
Right.
Interesting. So yeah, to kind of pivot into more of your background. Did you always want to get into tech, or was that something you just later transitioned over into?
Yeah, I actually switched my major in the middle of my college career. I thought I wanted to be an anesthesiologist before that. And really,
wow. That's totally different.
It is very different. Yeah. And I essentially I got to organic chemistry too, and I had to start studying a lot more, and I was not used to studying. And so I was like, I'm going to go find something easier than this.
Yeah, I can imagine
Great
that.
skill set to have.
computers
when
are fun.
finding
Computers are fun.
keys.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. So there's not a lot of women in tech. So did you find like the lack of women in tech, did that sway your decision any?
It didn't. I want to say I was kind of naive to a lot of that when I was younger. Definitely there were fewer women in our computer science program in university for sure. But I kind of just, thought that was the status of the world. And so I still, kept on, doing the things that I did, just trying to, do the best things for myself without really thinking too much about it. It wasn't until, kind of later in my career, as my career progressed and I, experienced certain situations or things like that, where I realized, oh, there's a reason why there aren't a ton of women in tech. And then it kind of hit me after the fact. So yeah, I want to say I was pretty naive going into all of this. But it's definitely something that I've picked up on a lot more, and I can understand why there's barriers. At the same time, want to help break those down because they don't need to be there.
That's interesting. So why would you say that the game industry is not necessarily, or the tech industry is not necessarily as welcoming to women?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's tech in general. The gaming industry has, a lot of its own challenges, but it's tech in general. And
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, gosh, that's a good question. I don't, if I was to name like a single root cause, I don't know if I can, go back in time and do that. But I
Right.
think a lot of it is, as tech companies have grown, there has been a lot of, people hire their friends. People hire people who, sound like them, look like them, feel the same way about certain things that they do, that kind of thing. And that just kind of lack of general like thought diversity, it comes with other repercussions as well.
Right.
I think there's probably long rooted, sexist things, as well. Women belong in the kitchen, those types of things. And so,
Right.
somebody a woman who's coming in with a very strong opinion, there's connotations and things like that come with that you have to break through, or you have to be kind of numb to. And not everybody has the same, tolerance level or the same willpower to kind of push through those things.
Absolutely.
The straight through the door is women have enough sense not to want to or be willing to work 16-hour days.
There's things like that as well. Yes.
You're a perfect example. It's like 16. I've done plenty of 20s and just didn't blink twice about it. Yeah, she has more sense than me.
Yeah. I mean, and there's other aspects to it too, right? So like typically women are going to be, the ones that are the primary caregivers for children and things like that. And so like working a 16-hour day just physically isn't possible. And that's not the situation that I'm in. But I know for, a lot of women that I've worked with throughout my career, they have to make the hard decision between, your family or your career. And a lot of men aren't faced with that decision. It's more of a luxury. And I think that's changing too, but yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Makes sense.
Just go founder mode. Just work 20-hour days, kids from a distance, and ship them off to military school. It's all fine, right?
Depends who you ask, I guess.
So yeah, are you a gamer as well? Is that one of the reasons that prompted you to work at Electronic Arts?
I am, yeah. So I've been playing games really my whole life. As a kid, it was often my brother who got the gaming consoles, and then I would beg to play with him. Through college, games were basically my social life through college. So, I would spend hours and hours and hours playing games like Battlefield and whatnot with, my family, with my friends.
Nice.
On a World of Warcraft. But yeah, it's something that has been a part of my life for a long time. And I had wanted to get into the gaming industry. I thought it would be dream job kind of thing. When I was in college, I applied for dozens of roles, maybe even hundreds, didn't get a call back on a single one of them. So yeah, getting the opportunity later in career was super cool.
Oh, awesome. So you were primarily like a multiplayer gamer, like you mentioned, World of Warcraft, Battlefield. Did you get into any of the single player games?
Funny enough, as much as I played multiplayer games when I was younger, I am primarily a single player gamer right now.
Oh,
Right.
awesome.
So you like RPGs mainly?
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm currently playing Baldur's Gate. I'm late to the party on that, but that's what I'm playing right now. Big Zelda fan. Played a lot of.
I'm huge into Zelda. Huge into Zelda myself.
Question: Skyrim or Witcher?
Ooh, I've spent a lot more time with Skyrim, so I'm gonna have to go Skyrim.
All right, she's good, guys. She's good to go.
So yeah, what about Skyrim is it that really stood out to you?
Oh, probably when I first started playing that game, the ability to play as a Kahit, the cats, was like so fun. I'm a big animal person as well. I do a ton of volunteer work in my free time, and so I just thought that was like uh, the funnest twist on a character to run around as. So really, that's kind of what drew me to it, and then just the ability to explore such an amazingly massive world, particularly for the time that that game came out. Be able to interact with so many different elements of the game, that kind of thing was just unprecedented for anything I had experienced. So yeah,
Right.
it was cool.
Now, what about the Final Fantasy series? Are you a fan of that?
I have not really played Final Fantasy too much. I think Final Fantasy X was the one I really, really tried to sink some time into, and I very embarrassingly got caught at a particular part of the game, and spent like a good 8 hours trying to bust through it and couldn't. And so I just gave it up.
Right.
So yeah, that's one major franchise that I've really not played much of.
Yeah, a lot of people really love Final Fantasy VII. I think they remastered it actually.
Yep. My husband plays that. He plays all the Final Fantasy games, so I get a good look into them. I just don't experience them firsthand.
Got it.
So yeah, have you seen it's the Matrix demo where they allow you to interact with AI NPCs?
Sorry, you cut out for part of that. What did you?
Yeah, I asked. Did you see the Matrix demo? It's like a Matrix video game where you're able to interact with AI powered NPCs. I think they're powered by Chat GPT or something.
Oh no, I did not see that. That's interesting. I'm gonna have to look that up.
Yeah, I really think utilizing AI for NPCs that's the next step forward to make a more dynamic and realistic world.
Yeah.
From your perspective, though.
Completely.
Oh, go ahead.
I think it's going to be the complete opposite. I think that having AI NPCs is the worst thing ever in the history of gaming, because treat NPCs as secondary castaway citizens is going to come back to bite them so badly when they have to come back to individual personalities, when each AI has its own saved personality profile per NPC and they remember everything you've done to them. Oh, it's going to be great.
Yeah, that just thinking about it that way kind of makes me excited to see what you can do. But yeah, I mean, I think it's going to depend on how well you train up the models that are behind your NPCs. I mean, in a lot of games, like there's so much lore that doesn't really make it into the game, or is so hidden within the game, that if there's ways that you can kind of bring some of that to the forefront and provide unique experiences for people who are playing through, I think that's super cool.
Awesome.
So, like from your perspective, what are some ideas that you would like to see implemented in going forward in the future of gaming?
Oh, that's a good question that I don't know if I'm going to have a great answer for. One thing that I can think of is, I love the way that a lot of games are evolving to become more just generally immersive. VR and things like that is not something that I've gotten. I've played Beat Saber and some other games like that, but not super immersed into. But I think the ability to actually feel like you're in a particular place or you're with particular people, that kind of thing. I think that could kind of unlock a different, emotional reaction that you have to a video game. Otherwise, I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know if I've got a good answer, to be honest. So.
Sure.
There's a reason I'm not a game creator.
Logan or Brian, did y'all have anything? Okay, so
Uh,
for
yeah, no, I did.
okay.
So you had mentioned that you do volunteer work. What is that like?
I do, yeah. So I do a lot of animal rescue volunteer work. So for the last, I don't know,
Oh,
about 20
awesome.
years, yeah, for about 20 years, I've been doing that. And primarily I've worked with special needs cats. And in primarily, I guess in large part, it's been cats with a neurological condition called cerebellar hypoplasia. And so
Right.
essentially what that means is that they're wobbly. And usually that occurs because the mom is vaccinated with a particular type of vaccine when she's pregnant at particular stages of the pregnancy. And back 20 years ago, when I first started volunteering, not even a lot of vets actually knew what the condition was. So we did a lot of research, built up some educational materials for veterinary schools, things like that, and then just generally provided networking for people who found cats with this condition to find adopters that could be potentially out of state, out of country, that kind of thing. Um,
Right.
I've also worked with a lot of guinea pigs and rabbits. And then today, or more recently, I co-founded a group that is local to Seattle that does data-driven advocacy, essentially, using data that we have in the city to identify where kind of the biggest problem spaces are from an animal welfare perspective, and then kind of shine a light on those and try to get some resourcing and solutions in place.
Oh, wow. No, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's fun. So maybe not always fun, but meaningful.
Meaningful. Yeah, I mean, I've recently started volunteering at a church food drive, and it's just, as the cars come around to the church, you see the little babies in the cars smiling and stuff. It's just a nice opportunity to connect with people and give back to the community.
Yeah, yeah. There is an intrinsic uh, feeling of just, I don't know, a glowing, like you feel like you did good. When you come out of a volunteer engagement. So
Exactly.
So yeah, you also mentioned that you're running a nonprofit. Is that correct? To help women get into tech.
yes, it's not a nonprofit. I'm the global co-chair for EA's Women's Ultimate Team ERG, and so it is our uh, essentially our employee resource group that's focused on ensuring that women at EA have the best job experiences of their careers. Um, really, one of the things that I'm super passionate about with that is getting more women into tech roles and into gaming roles in particular. It's we talked a little bit about before that the tech industry has a representation problem, and there aren't always as many women in tech as we should see when you look at things like the number of women that are graduating with computer science degrees and things like that. So it's something that I think I've been through enough experiences personally in my career, and I'm in a position right now where I am in a leadership role and I can kind of help to change that. So it's a really exciting opportunity for me to be part of. And then one of the other things that we're looking at with our ERG is getting women into games because it's not always easy for women or girls or to play video games as well. You
Right.
in a multiplayer game, you join the chat and you get a bunch of 10-year-old boys screaming at you about that you're a girl.
A girl, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not super welcoming all of the time, but that's something that we're super passionate about changing as well. So yeah, it's a pretty cool opportunity.
Do you guys try to moderate that at all? Like the little kids, going nuts when there's a girl?
Yeah, I mean, each game has its own, kind of thresholds, for what kind of behavior is tolerable versus not. Really, we want to provide players with, the ability to, kind of determine what's acceptable or not for them. There's a lot of different things that various different gaming companies do in the industry in terms of moderating out toxic chat and things like that. matchmaking, making sure that there's ability to have private matches, that you can mute a player, things like that. So there's a lot of capabilities now that didn't exist 5-10 years ago. And I think, just across the industry, we'll see that expanding more and more.
Just more and more improvements in that realm.
Yeah.
So yeah, in gaming, there's not a lot of heroines. So were there any particular gaming hero? Excuse me.
Yeah.
Any particular gaming heroines that you gravitated towards, like say Princess Zelda or Samus or?
Yeah, no, I'd say Princess Zelda was probably the biggest one. But you spend the majority of your time playing as Link, right? So, yeah, in general, I would say Zelda's probably the biggest one. Otherwise, I've really enjoyed a lot of games where women or female characters just have more of a presence and an impact over the game. So one of my favorite games that I've replayed a couple of times is called Catherine, and it's a Japanese game about. Well, I don't even know how to describe what it's about, but it's a very puzzle based game. A guy that has kind of these very intense, vivid dreams that he's going through, nightmares almost. And there's a character called Catherine in that game that he is really drawn to, but is really kind of problematic for him. And so there's things like that too that I just find really fun. I like to see women as kind of like chaotic characters that are really gonna make an impact and make a name for themselves and kind of mess things up and be a big part of the story. So I'd say I've kind of looked more that way than for the heroine, aspect itself.
Right.
Okay, so more diversity in depictions of women would be more welcome versus just like the save the world heroine.
Yeah. I think in general, like there's a lot of different people in the world, a lot of different people with different, perspectives, motivations, things like that. So, the diversity is always great. But in general, like I don't have to always play as a female character to feel like I can feel immersed in a game. But
right.
A complete absence of female characters is also kind of weird, depending on what.
Yeah. That's funny. Now, in terms of Zelda, what's your favorite Zelda? Do you like the old NES ones or the Super Nintendo ones or, more recent?
Yeah, my favorite Zelda game is actually the Wind Waker. It was the Zelda game that got me into the franchise in the first place.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I absolutely
So
love
many more cool points.
Yeah. I've gone back in time and I've played, the older ones. I've obviously kept up with the newer ones as well. But that one, because it was the one that introduced me, will always have that hook.
Did you ever play
one? Oh, was that on GameCube?
Gosh, I think that was on the Wii U. So.
Okay.
The Skyward Sword and Wind Waker both were initially GameCube, if I'm not mistaken, and then they were remade on Wii U.
Yeah, I think it was the Wii U where I played it. So.
Nice.
So did you like Breath of the Wild, and do you feel like that was a step forward or a step back from Wind Waker?
Oh, I love Breath of the Wild. It was it felt like such a bigger world. There was so much more to do. I did get a little bit kind of focused on collecting all the things and making sure that I got all the shrines and all that kind of good stuff, more so than I did in something like Wind Waker. But I thought the story was, the story was fantastic. The world was absolutely beautiful, and absolutely enjoyed my time playing it for sure.
Awesome. I think Nintendo's one of the few companies left that can make games that appeal to everybody.
Yeah, no, they do a absolutely fantastic job.
Brian, Logan, did y'all have any further questions? Yeah, I think that's all the questions I had.
Yeah, I've got one.
Okay, sure.
So with the that are currently ongoing with industries across the introduction of exploitability factor increases of AI, as well as convert POCs into functions. What do you think and feel are going to be threat intelligence landscapes? Obviously, places like TX and places like that, exchanges are currently trying to get ahead of the just chaos that AI has unleashed as a whole. But what do you feel is going to be the next place to be in terms of intel sourcing to integrate with technology platforms to help to mitigate the new issues?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if there'll be a single place to be. I think really what we're going to see is that AI is going to permeate, all aspects of technology. And what that means is that the way that we do security reviews and the way that we monitor our applications for suspicious activity and the way that we the types of keywords and things like that we look at when we're monitoring our community for signs of disruption, things like that is all going to look different. So I don't know that it's necessarily a single aspect of the industry or of any piece of work that we do that'll change. I think it's going to be small incremental changes across all of it that'll build up over time.
Awesome. I have another question in regards to so CrowdStrike, even though that wasn't the result of like a malicious hacker or anything, we're seeing that just because everything in the digital world is so interconnected, a bad actor is able to bring down a lot of different systems. Like, like what is your opinion on how we can protect ourselves from, say, like major infrastructure going down due to a bad actor?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it depends on if you are referring to us as a consumer or a regular person or as a company. But in general, I would say the CrowdStrike issue was something that they kind of caused themselves. It wasn't a particular threat actor who exploited a thing that made the internet go down. So I think ensuring that particularly where we have vital services that are impacting thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of machines that are out on the internet, servers that are providing services to people, particularly if you're providing an enterprise wide solution that is used across the globe, then making sure that you have the right both processes and technology in place to prevent certain things like that from happening is key. And the way that you prevent things like that, obviously it's different for each individual problem you have, but the key is that there's folks that are in positions of influencing how that technology is run that are thinking about those things, and that you're constantly testing your defenses and your assumptions and your processes, and you're evolving them. A lot of times folks they implement a process or something like that and they're like, great, we have that, and they walk away. But 5 years later, the way that can actually manifest in issues, or the way that it could not hold up to the way that attacker activity works or things like that can stagnate. And so it's a constant evolution, and it's something that needs kind of continual evaluation and improvement too.
Awesome. Logan or Brian, did you have any closing questions?
I don't. And Brian disconnected.
Oh, okay.
We lost Brian.
But yeah, we definitely appreciate you coming on to the show. Did you want to leave any closing thoughts to the audience?
No. Thanks for having me here. It was nice to chat with you all.
Yeah, it was awesome to have you on. We definitely would love to have you back sometime.
Cool. Sounds good.